machinations of the Nazis' evil empire.
Hey guys, you're watching Movieguide. I'm your host, Evie Bear Carroll, and we're here with the directors and writer of Resistance 1942, and it's coming out soon. How exciting it is to see it come to fruition. You've started with the script, and then you see it on the big screen.
8-year marathon.
Wow.
Pretty crazy,
Is it really 8 years?
Yeah, since we first...
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So,
It's so
when
long.
this won what used to be the Kronos Prize and became the Keros Pro. So we were the inaugural Kronos winning script with this movie.
Oh, wow.
And that was back in
2014, yeah.
So 8 years running.
Yeah.
And here
Yeah.
you go.
So
Yeah.
crazy. So
Now it's coming out.
it feels very good to finally have it out where people can see it.
Yep.
Yeah, and like, what's the like emotional feel to it when you're like, here it is. I've worked so hard from every element because you ended up being the directors on it.
It's monumental in a way. You know, there's been moments where you feel like just Sisyphus. You're just pushing the boulder back up, expecting it to roll back down over you, and you have to just keep starting over and over again. But every time we inched it a little bit further, and it's just been really a monumental effort. And to get here now, you know, days away from release just feels... I don't know, it feels huge. There's a relief, but there's
It's
an
almost
excitement.
hard to measure.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it feels like, are we really there?
Yeah.
I sent up a GIF a little while ago of guys trying to get a golf cart out of the mud where it's like inch, and then finally it goes. It's like, this is us in the movie, right?
Yeah.
And like, it's like,
Just
go,
8 years of effort.
go.
So it's a weird mix of like just terrific excitement and also maybe this like anticipated exhale that hasn't quite happened yet.
Yeah,
but,
we still haven't
we
let our
know.
breaths out.
Even when you first came to it, what was it that spurred on the idea of this film?
Well, I don't know how much backstory we want to get into, but like Landon and I have been friends since childhood, and best friends at that. And we knew that we wanted to write and direct together, and we've exercised that in other mediums. We actually we were third place for the Keros Prize for a script that got optioned by our producer, Jonah Hirsch, who produced Resistance 1942. And there was a moment in the course of that film that we thought we might direct it, and then that didn't work out. But Jonah became convinced that we could handle a feature. And so I distinctly remember the dinner where it was like, hey guys, we're not going to have you direct that other script, but we want to develop something specifically for you guys to direct. So what do you have? And we brought 3-4 ideas to the table or something like that. And this was one of them. And it was very different when we conceived of it. The initial idea was, I guess, a little bit more like, the initial idea was Jacques was broadcasting in an attic and everything took place in the same day, and the Gestapo was raiding the building and they were just going floor by floor, and we were just waiting. The whole film was a countdown until they got to the attic and interrupted the broadcast. And Jonah really loved it, but he also really encouraged us to open it up more than that. That we should dream a little bigger, which ended up being great. And, you know, we ended up with Andre and the estate and a lot of the other, you know, scenes in the film that we really love. But that was it, was him saying, we want to develop something with you guys. What do you got? We brought some ideas to the table. We all really loved and gravitated towards this one. And we wrote it actually not knowing about the Kronos Prize at all. We just wrote it thinking we were going to go down this path. And then we finished. And I think you text us and we're like, hey, they have the Kronos Prize now. Should we apply to this? And we were like, yeah, why not? And we did. And we won, which was wild. Yeah. And then, it was years of trying to get people to believe in us as directors and never giving up. And then suddenly we were in pre-production.
And then it all went crazy. Like everything moved super fast through shooting in May of 2017. Yeah. And then as soon as we finished with that, then everything started to slow down a little bit again as we got into post. And then the craziness of COVID hit, and we fought our way through that. And then finally got everything in the can, delivered, like went through all the drama of having distributors, not having distributors, like having people on board, not having people on board. By the time we finally got to the end, it's like, it's funny because you keep hitting these things. This is why we keep holding our breaths, even though the movie's coming out literally on Friday. Yeah. Is every time we get to the next thing, we're like, oh, finally, okay, cool. So we can start to coast a little bit. We can relax. We'll be fine. And then it's like the moment you let your guard down in the slightest bit, something else comes in from the side. Is like, nope. Okay, here we go. Yeah. And you got to pick up and take off again. So we're like kind of at the spot where waiting to see.
Yeah.
So
it's like so exciting, but it's also like this holding our breath.
Yeah. This is the movie industry. It's crazy,
Yeah,
right?
it's a wild, wild industry.
So, how important or how impactful was the Movie Guide Awards and winning those prizes?
Oh, hugely so.
I mean, yeah, it's been, I don't know that we would have the careers that we have without both of them, beginning with the Keros when we placed third or second or whatever.
That's what connected us with Jonah's. He had an eye on those, and so he read all the scripts that came through, found ours most compelling. And
other relationships too. We ended up having a number of relationships off of that first one. And then, of course, Jonah, and Under the Apple Tree was that script, and that leading, I mean, there's just a straight line from that first Keros to this film. And even getting people to believe in it and understand the story we were trying to tell and all of that kind of stuff. It was a hugely legitimizing agent, I guess, for like two people who we've directed in other mediums. We've done shorts, we've done a lot of stuff on stage and stuff, but like there's this thing in the movie industry, particularly now, where there's just not as much vertical movement as maybe there was 50 years ago. And to be a director, you have to demonstrate that you can direct. And to do a feature, you have to have done a feature. It's a weird catch-22, and we kept running into that.
Yeah. You have any experience? Well, not yet.
But yeah, this was like a huge thing that was like, no, this script has merit, and we're the right storytellers for it. So yeah, I mean, I don't think there was a single conversation with an investor or talent or anyone that came along where we weren't trying our best to leverage that, if that's fair to say.
Well, your point about the legitimizing, like going to the awards themselves and being able to see like there is a deep and wide community of people that are committed to telling these kinds of stories and pushing them through. It's like, okay, like this is not just us, sitting in our, living room trying to bang out a script and hoping for the best. Like there's a place for this. And so knowing that it exists and that we can push for it, like helps you to get through those hard times and be like, okay, we know others have done it before us. We know that there's a hunger for it and that people want to see this. Let's keep pushing. We're going to find the right person. We're going to find the right thing, whatever it is we need to get that next step.
I love that. And I mean, this movie had so much faith in it. I know that non-Christians or people without faith could watch it too and enjoy it. And but was that something really important to you guys to add the faith elements?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like both sides of it are super important to us. We did want a movie that would appeal to non-Christians. Growing up, some of our friend group is incredibly diverse, from phenotype to religious beliefs, and we wanted to tell a story of, working together in the face of evil. And obviously our worldviews work their way into all of our work. So like that has to be there. That's a mandate from us as storytellers. But we also wanted it to be a broader invitation than that. And we think the historical precedent of the time period that we're looking at, it was a bigger group of people who stood together in the face of fascism. And yeah, we wanted to lean into that.
Yeah, absolutely.
What did you want to say about the character who let them into his house? Like, what were you? I mean, he was a great character because he kind of showed his transition of like being just complacent and then.
Yeah, I mean, it ties into the thing that everyone deals with, right? Which is if you are given the opportunity to enrich yourself at the cost of either someone else that you don't see or something like that, then like morally, where should you as a person stand on those things, right? So being able to dabble with that Matt's very fond of saying, good stories that make you think go away before they come back. So we can look at a time where most people who lived through that are no longer with us. And so there's a certain separation you can get where you can look at that time, make some very clear moral judgments, and allow people to access that without kind of getting their hackles to rise. And then through that, they can then process and go, okay, over time, they start to examine their own life in relative to that story that they experienced and go, okay, maybe I need to be reevaluating some of the stuff that I'm doing, right? I think C.S. Lewis called it the watchful dragons, right? When he wrote Chronicles of Narnia, is that if you bring something that's too explicit, people's watchful dragons will immediately crush it before it gets a chance. But if you can get in under the radar, as it were, and tell a compelling story, then that compelling story can find a seed within them, and then over time it can grow into a spot where they can hopefully accept an idea or a thought that they may have rejected out of hand if you had just given it to them straight.
Yeah. And I think the other thing for us about Andre was to introduce a little bit more gray area, a little bit more moral ambiguity. I think the question as to whether or not he was a good man is an interesting question to ponder because there's so many facets to it. And I think that complexity helps the film because it's really easy to just kind of look at these diametrically opposed forces, right? And it's really easy to look at that time period and go, there's a really clear, easy to understand evil. And on one hand, we love that and we want to lean into that. But on the other hand, the truth of the moment and how you navigate or how people navigated, that time, for us, it's really easy to say, like, it's really, there's an easy to understand right and an easy to understand wrong within that historical context. But I think living in that moment, you don't always see it. Yeah. And Andre represents a little bit more of that ambiguity and a little bit of that, like those choices. I don't know how much he had thought about his choices and questioned them until he meets Jacques and Juliet and the band. Anyway, a little bit more.
The importance of grace, right?
Yeah.
For us nowadays,
that's a huge
right?
thing.
Like I hope that future generations will look back on our generation and offer us the same grace that we then give other generations when we look back and say, yes, that was a terrible thing you did, but I can at least understand as a human in the midst of that, like maybe you have a family, right, that you're worried about. And you're like, you can either speak up, which is a morally courageous thing to do, in that context especially. And you can do that, but if you do that and you're putting now your family at risk, that's not an easy question to just put out there, right? It's not a simple thing. So being able to reach back with some empathy and provide grace to look and say Andre, right, was in a situation where he's like, I have a life that I love and comforts that surround me, and he's grown up with all of that. And now he's in a spot where he's like, well, I'll risk this little thing to help these people out, right? And then that risk grows and grows and grows. And that's what you're saying. You could see that transformation in him where he got to a point of conviction where he said, what I am doing is genuinely wrong. Like, I can't be doing this anymore. It is worth the cost to protect these people, to not give them away when I'm confronted with the ultimate evil that was represented by Klaus. So, there's a lot of, I hope, really good conversation to be had after watching this movie.
There's a lot of depth to it. Yeah. It's so well written that you have the jeopardy there throughout. I almost said, we need to speed up or something. This is kidding me. And it's just, how many revisions do you guys do when you're writing a script to get it to that point?
A lot.
As many as needed?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
It's, it's such the act of creating a film is such a strange and collaborative process. And it's collaborative for us from the inception because we are collaborators, but also the process of making film is collaborative, and we really love that. So by the time you start getting actors involved and stuff, we really delight in having those conversations. And, I think for us, having other artists on board and craftspeople who will also take ownership of their portion of it and fight for what they think is right is really fun and is how we make it better. So, we were revising all the time. On set. We want it, neither of us need to be right. We just want it to be good. And so, we try and bring that to all of our work and, certainly to the revision process. And we were very open. I think Jason Patrick offered a lot of insight into the moral ambiguity of Andre and what his early motivations might be versus his end. And Carrie was everyone, all of them were so great with us, and brought so many ideas to the table, and our wonderful production designer and DP and really everyone. And then also we want to, you have to, when you're directing, you start with a vision. But it also, for us, particularly in the independent world and with the budget we had to be malleable enough to kind of meet ourselves wherever we were at. And a lot of times that meant looking at the actual location that we had, or what resources we had, or how long we were going to have to shoot something, and then trying to be really intelligent and efficient with those resources, and not being afraid to change something in the script to really ideally capitalize on those resources, whatever they were. When we found the estate, we changed a decent amount of the script and where things happened to match that location because it was so beautiful and it offered so much, and we knew we weren't going to find something better than that in Los Angeles. And we knew we loved it, and instantly. Yeah, so we are constantly revising to meet any number of things. And it changes, right? From like us alone in the writer's room to us with the producers to us with actors. And then, the way we approach those revisions has to change, but there's a lot of them.
There's a very interesting disconnect too between what's in your head versus what's there. Like even now, right? Like there's a movie that Matt and I had in our heads as we wrote a script that's still there, right? That movie never got shot. And then there's the movie that's done now, and they're not the same thing. Like what's there is the best thing because that's what's real. But at the same time, it's fun to look back in your head and go, okay, so like there are some things that I missed that I wish we could have gotten in that for, we didn't have enough days to shoot or whatever. We couldn't pull it off. So it's like, how do we then intentionally on the next thing go, I want to make sure that particular thing that I think was missing makes it into the next one. And then you start revising for yourself and looking forward to the next one. Like how do we make the next one that much better?
Well, this movie could have even gone on, right? You could have the spin-off stories to it.
We've already
and
got
stuff.
that.
Yeah, we've talked about
the
that.
script right now.
Yeah,
That's
we're
in the
a whole
process.
series.
We really want to tell the story of Ramachuel. We think that Jacques' listeners and the story of Ramachuel would be a really fascinating story to tell.
Affectionately calling it a sidequel.
Yeah.
Parallel. So that's the village he warns at the very end. We want to tell their story.
Yeah. So final question for the Movie Guide Awards, would you guys recommend writers to do this and
Absolutely,
submit to the
100%.
Kairos Prize and everything?
Yeah, I mean, I think twofold. And because like we're incredibly blessed that we won and it helped us, launch careers and make this movie, but also just in terms of process, like giving ourselves that deadline, even when we wrote Under the Apple Tree for the Kairos Prize, that was a huge motivating factor. I remember Landon, you had the idea for that script and he was like, we talked about writing it and we were kind of non-committal and stuff, and it was like, no, let's lock ourselves together for a week and write this thing.
We literally
and here's
stuck
our
ourselves
deadline
in it.
is the Kairos Prize.
It was fantastic.
So, not just, I mean, obviously, like what can come of it is incredible and huge, but also I think it's a part of being a writer these days. And, there aren't very many awards like this that celebrate this kind of work. And that's huge.
Meeting a deadline is
Yeah.
that is something you have to do, right?
The creative needs that. Right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
So having that present is a very big thing. But yeah, just there is an element of letting you know, okay, this is real, right? To be able to find something like this that is so well known, that is, it feels a little bit banal, but it's well funded, right? That if people are willing to actually put resources behind something, it tells you that it's meaningful.
Yeah.
It's not just a piece of paper you hang on the wall. Like someone actually said, I think we should be encouraging this next crop of people to come and develop this skill and become storytellers that can, bring a biblical worldview out into the world through film. So it being able to do that and being able to signal to us through it that this is a market that actually needs people to strive in, then, it gives us a very clear, like, okay, fantastic. There's something here. We're going to aim for it. We're going to do something great.
Dear friends, in the face of impossible odds, all the darkness in the world cannot extinguish the light of a single candle. Sharing in your burdens, delighting in your victories, keeping the flame of hope alight. Stay safe, my friends.
You have to help us.
The city's in